Hey everybody, Chris here from Academy of Worship, and I want to welcome you to a very interesting and very cool for me, and hopefully you, video about something I've wanted to get into and haven't really figured out how, kind of until now, I guess, and that is, will it worship? What does that mean? Well, it's my attempt to address certain musical things, whether it be gear or instruments, or effects or whatever, like take your pick of things, and ask the question, is it appropriate for worship? Now, spoiler alert, the answer to all of these questions is a resounding, of course it is. It just depends on how you use it and whether or not you know how to use this thing we're talking about. And today, if it's not obvious already, we're talking about Marshalls. Specifically, my Marshall JCM 2000. This is the DSL dual super lead 50 watt. And I love this amp. I use this amp all the time. And I wanted a way to get it on the channel to talk about it. But I wanted to address this kind of elephant in the room that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about. And that's folks that want to get into playing worship music or maybe dedicating their musical talents to the Lord, but they come from a place that's not this boutique, super expensive amp world, and where you're buying matchless amps or these vintage amps from the 50s and 60s, or guitars that cost more than most people's first car, those kinds of things. This is for you, and hopefully to bring those that maybe are into the boutique world or the vintage or whatever you want to call it world exclusively into a world that's maybe a little more accessible for the average Joe or average Jane out there. So this isn't meant to alienate anyone. I just wanted to address it. So here we are, the JCM 2000. It's a Marshall. Marshalls rock. I make no bones about it. I am a rock and roll guy to the core, always have been, and incorporating what I love into worship is something that I've been enjoying doing. So, what does this mean? Well, this means that if you've got an amp that is designed for metal, or an amp or an effect or whatever that is designed for something other than what you're being told you can use in a worship setting or in any musical setting where you're supposed to be reverent or those kind of things, I'm here to tell you it's okay to use it. Just make sure you know how. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today with this amp specifically. So what does this amp do? Well, to be honest, this amp does almost everything. It can do from clean all the way to the almost dirtiest of dirties. And I'll demonstrate some of those things today while taking you through some of the controls so that we can actually talk about this amp specifically. And I wanted to bring it up because it's one of those amps that you can get relatively cheap, anywhere from the maybe $500 to $700 used range, which I know isn't chump change or just extra change laying around, but it's definitely not $3,000, $2,000, those ranges. And it's a really good amp because, as you heard in the song at the beginning, it can do very clean and it can do very dirty. And it can do everything in between, and it's got all the fun stuff that you're going to need to accomplish those things. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with clean. Now, this amp has two channels. One is the green channel and one is the red channel. The green channel is the clean to mild breakup, kind of old school Marshall sounds, which I'll demonstrate, and it does it fantastic. And the red channel is the channel where it bumps it up into more of a, quote, lead channel, but you can use it for your rhythms if you want something super saturated, or at least much more saturated than the green channel can get. All right, so green channel. I am using my Sublime Tomcat, and it's got two P90s in it. I figured it would be a middle-of-the-road guitar. It's not humbuckers specifically, but it's not single coils, at least in the traditional sense. So we're meeting in the middle with power and clarity and chime. So just a note that I will demonstrate this tone knob is rolled off a little bit because I find this guitar is bright pretty much through every amp I put it through when using the bridge pickup. So I usually roll that back just a tiny bit. So note that. All right, so green channel. Where do I have it set? Let's listen. I've got it turned up pretty good in here. It's above what you would consider bedroom volume. I have sympathetic guitar strings ringing in the background, and it feels good. You won't necessarily run at this volume when playing, but it's got it, and I figured it's a Marshall, I should turn it up. So as you heard, it sounds great clean. It's completely clean. There's no breakup whatsoever. Well, on the green channel, you've got two controls: volume and gain. That's it. They share an EQ section, so if you're jumping between red and green channels, you're using the same EQ. Some would call that a weak point. I could understand that argument, but I find you can get a happy medium to where it works on both if you're going to use both. Now, having said that, if you want to stay on the green channel and use this as a pedal platform or just play clean, go for it. It sounds great doing that as well. It has a volume, a gain, and a button that you can push in for clean when it's out to crunch when it's in. Now, I've got it set with it out, so it's completely clean. My gain is almost at 8, and my volume's around 4. Now, if I push the button in to get the crunch channel, you get this. That was loud and awesome and Marshall. It was so perfect. But you can hear that the green channel can go crunchy easily. Now again, I have this up pretty loud in this room, so I know that I'm not representing how you would run it at church or in that kind of setting. However, maybe you have some kind of ISO room or a backstage area where you can crank it and it's not going just off the stage and blowing people's heads off. So maybe you could get it up this loud, and it sounds fantastic loud. Now, it goes without saying that amps are only as good as the speaker cabs you're running them through. And in this case, I'm running it through a matching Marshall 1960. It's the angled cab. It's got 75 watt Celestians in it, and it's stock. I didn't do anything to it, so that's what you're hearing. But note that I do run this through a 212 mainly. For bigger shows, I'll run it through a 412, and it sounds fantastic through everything I've put it through. So as long as you have a decent speaker cab, you're good to go. The red channel has two versions of the lead channel. One is lead 1, one is lead 2. I tend to use lead 2. I find that it's got a better tone curve on it that I like with my guitars, but your results, of course, may vary. And we'll talk about the EQ in just a second because I do have it sharing an EQ, but let me show you what the red channel sounds like. Yeah, baby. Marshall. Now, the amp's a little noisy, so I put it back in the clean channel to not have that hiss going on, but there's very few amps with this much gain that would be that quiet. There are some, but this one's not one of them. Yes, it is foot switchable. You can use any standard foot switch that has a latching capability to get it between the two channels, the red or the green. And you do have to select, however, whether you want lead 1 or lead 2 or crunch or clean on the green or red channels, respectively, before you switch them. You can't do that with a foot switch. That's something you have to select beforehand. Okay, now talking about EQ, I tend to, and have said this on the channel many a time, I don't like super bright guitar tones. This guitar is bright enough, as you heard with especially that red channel. It had plenty of high end. But I tend to roll a lot of things off. So things like presence controls, which are that ultra high stuff that you get out of an amp, can sound great through the right cab, but I tend to roll it way back. So my presence control is all the way down, which is over here. I have my treble set to 2, so also pretty far down. My mids are straight up. I find with Marshalls especially, mids are important, but electric guitar mids are a thing. Don't scoop them out. My bass is actually about 6, so just above halfway. And we have a reverb channel here, which we'll talk about in just a second, and I'll show you what that sounds like. But as you can see, the majority of my tone is like mids and low end, but because of this cab and because of the guitar and just generally not wanting to hear all that super high-end stuff in my guitar tone, I had most of that rolled off. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to show you what this sounds like with everything straight up the middle so you get a nice bass tone. I'm going to do it with both the green and the red. I'm not going to change what version of green and red. It's going to be clean, not the crunch in green, and it's going to be lead 2 on red. So here we go. Here's the green channel, and I'll put everything straight up and down. Okay, now let's hit the red channel, lead 2. There you go. That's both channels, EQ straight up and down, but I'm going to set it back the way I like it because that's a little piercing to me. Don't know about you. Maybe you'll love it. Whatever. Now, I mentioned there's a reverb channel, and there is one for each side, the channel A and channel B. And again, I didn't tell you this at the beginning, but the green channel is considered channel A, and the ultra gain is what they call channel B, or the red channel. Most people just say green and red channels, but if you need to refer to it, the reverb is talking about channel A and channel B. So you can turn them up individually and have one reverb for your A channel and one reverb for your B channel, which is pretty cool. It is a spring reverb, as far as I know, built into the amp. So let's hear what that sounds like on the green, and then I'll switch it over to the red channel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the reverb just straight up and down on both channels so you get an idea. It'll probably be too much reverb, but here we go. Okay, now red channel. I tend to not even use those because I run a pedal board and I run it in a 4-cable method. So I run all of my modulations and reverbs and delays and stuff like that, time effects, through the loop in the amp, which it does have. And then I run all of my gain, boost, stuff like that into the front of the amp. And between all of that, I find I can get pretty much any sound I'll ever need out of an amp in the situations that I'm in. So that's a general overview and kind of, I guess, review, not really, I love this amp, of the Marshall JCM 2000 dual super lead 50 watt. It does come in a 100 watt variant. These were made from like late 90s to, I won't say late 2000s, but mid to late 2000s. And you can find them used in the market all over the place and for a pretty good price. So if you're looking for a good Marshall to get into that whole Marshall territory, this one will work great. And yeah, it can be used in worship. Just don't go crazy or use it appropriately, wear appropriately. However, it's worth the price of admission to see people's faces in a church when you walk in with a Marshall. It's just kind of cool that way. That's pretty much it. I don't want to make this video super duper duper long, but if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. It's great to see all the new subscribers that are coming over. If you're not yet subscribed and you find this content useful, it'd be a huge blessing to have your subscription and hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and just get the word out that, you know, we're talking about stuff that maybe other worship channels aren't talking about. And like I said, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you're one of those rockers out there or one of those folks that has all this equipment and just wonders whether or not they should use it, yeah, use it. And also let me know that you're using it. It'd be cool to hear what you use. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be an amp or a guitar. It can be whatever gear that's not normally found in a worship setting. So that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Now go and twist some knobs and flip some switches or push some buttons if that's what you have. But go make some music and go honor the Lord with it. See you in the next one.